We're going to be diving into Chapter 64, Journey of Faith Built for God, BFG movement. And here's the twist. It's their Christian edition of the Tao Te Ching. Talk about a unique blend, ancient Eastern wisdom seen through a Christian lens.
Yeah, the Tao Te Ching offers these timeless insights into living in harmony with the natural flow of the universe. So integrating that with a Christian perspective, I think, has the potential to be really eye-opening.
Absolutely. And so our mission for you today, learner, is to unearth the practical wisdom within this chapter. How can we use this chapter to better navigate challenges, foster personal growth, and find that stable path forward? Okay. All without getting lost in theological debates or feeling like we're suddenly back in philosophy class.
Yeah, we want to make this very applicable to everyday life.
Exactly. So this chapter touches on some really crucial themes. Preparing for what's ahead, the surprising power of those small beginnings, the beauty of simplicity, knowing when to take a step back, the absolute importance of sticking with things, and then this whole idea of renewal and restoration.
Quite a lot to unpack.
It is. And what's cool is that the source itself actually gives us a framework to help make sense of it all. They call it the Trinitarian method, or MAP.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It breaks things down into mindset, aim, and practice. So pretty straightforward. So let's start with mindset, preparing for the journey. And the first point that really stood out to me was this idea of proactive preparation. The chapter states, prepare before problems begin. Get things in order before they get out of hand.
You know, that's actually a cornerstone of so many different philosophies and wisdom traditions, that idea of anticipating and preventing rather than reacting.
Right. And the BFG Handbook links this concept to Proverbs 22.3, which says, the prudent see danger and take refuge.
That's a great verse.
So it's about, cultivating that foresight to anticipate challenges and to actually take steps to prevent them before they become major issues.
Right.
So for you, the learner, think about how this applies to your life, whether it's prepping for a big presentation, tackling a new learning goal, or just managing your daily to-do list. How much emphasis do you put on that initial groundwork?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Could being a little more proactive actually save you a ton of stress and hassle down the road. Yeah.
It's about consciously shifting from that reactive mode to a mode of thinking ahead. Instead of constantly putting out fires, you're focusing on preventing them in the first place.
Exactly. And that could be as simple as taking a few minutes to outline a project before you jump in.
Yeah.
Or reviewing your learning goals regularly to make sure you're on track.
Exactly.
So this next point is something I find incredibly encouraging, and that's the power of small beginning. The chapter says, I love this imagery, a tree trunk as wide as a man's arm span grows from a seedling. A tower 9 stories high begins with a mound of earth. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a footprint beneath the feet.
Wow, that is a powerful image.
Isn't it?
It really highlights that even the most impressive accomplishments are built on those consistent small steps.
Absolutely. And the BFG Handbook ties this in with Zechariah 4, which says, do not despise these small beginnings.
Yeah, that's such an important reminder.
It is. It's about recognizing the value in that initial effort, no matter how small it might seem in the grand scheme of things.
It is, isn't it?
So for you, the learner, think about those times when you're facing a steep learning curve. Maybe you're trying to understand a really complex new topic. It can feel completely overwhelming to know where to even begin.
Right.
But this point reminds us that it's okay, even essential, to start with the basics, with that first article, that initial concept, that single seed of understanding. It has the potential to blossom into something amazing.
Really encouraging.
It is. What stands out to you most about this idea of small beginnings?
Well, I think it's the emphasis on the journey itself, right? It takes the pressure off needing to have everything figured out all at once.
Right.
And instead, it encourages us to just focus on taking those small steps, consistently building momentum and confidence as we go.
I love that.
Yeah.
Right, now shifting gears a little bit in terms of mindset, we come to embracing simplicity and humility.
Okay.
The chapter states, the wise do not desire what men desire. They do not store up treasures of this world. They learn to be rid of worldly knowledge.
It suggests that we should be focusing on those deeper intrinsic values instead of just chasing external validation or just accumulating information for the sake of it.
Right. Investing in those eternal treasures, the things that truly matter.
Exactly.
So for you, the learner, this doesn't have to mean making some drastic lifestyle change right away, but maybe it's about being more intentional with the information you consume.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to absorb every little detail or every fleeting trend, maybe focus on the core principles, the fundamental understanding that will provide a solid foundation.
Right. Less is more.
Less clutter, more clarity.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sort of intellectual humility as well. We don't know everything. Being open to new information, being willing to let go of old ideas that may no longer serve us.
Absolutely. Now, this next point can be tough for a lot of us who like to feel in control.
I hear that.
Trusting God's timing, or, as the chapter puts it, non-interference. The chapter says, those who interfere will fail. The wise do not interfere, and yet they never fail.
That's quite a statement.
It is. It's about recognizing that there's a natural rhythm to things, and sometimes the best approach is to step back and allow things to unfold in their own way.
To trust the process.
Exactly. And the BFG Handbook links this idea to Psalm 46.10. Be still and know that I am God. So it's about surrendering that need to micromanage or to force outcomes. Sometimes the best thing we can do is create the right conditions and then let go.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the hardest things for us to do as humans.
It really is. You want to see progress, and sometimes that urge to push harder to make things happen can be really strong.
Oh yeah, I totally relate to that.
But think about times when you've tried to force a solution or rush a learning process. Did it always lead to the best result?
Good point.
What are your thoughts on that? How do you differentiate between trusting the process and just being passive?
That is a great question. I think trusting the process isn't about being passive at all. It's about taking informed action and then releasing the need to control the outcome.
I like that.
It's like planting a seed. You prepare the soil, you plant the seed, you water it, but then you have to trust that nature will take its course.
Right.
You can't constantly dig it up to see if it's growing. You have to have faith in the process.
You have to let go and trust. So we can't talk about journeys of any kind without talking about the importance of sticking with it, the importance of perseverance.
Right.
The chapter says, and I love this, in handling affairs, people often fail the point of success. Keep the faith to the end, no less than at the beginning, and the journey will have no failure.
I think that's a really important reminder because often the final stages of anything are the most challenging. You can get so close to the finish line and then just lose steam.
Right. And the BFG Handbook points us to Galatians 6.9, which says, let us not become weary in doing good. So it's a reminder that even when things get tough, we need to keep going.
Yeah.
We need to maintain that commitment and that initial enthusiasm. How often have you felt that feeling of being so close to a breakthrough, but the temptation to give up is just so strong? This point is a powerful reminder that it's in those moments that our commitment and perseverance are truly tested.
What do you think helps you push through those moments?
I think for me, it's about reconnecting with the why, remembering why I started in the first place and what I'm hoping to achieve.
That's a great point.
And it's also about reframing those setbacks.
Right.
Seeing them not as failures, but as opportunities to learn and grow.
It's all part of the process.
Exactly. So the final point we'll cover under mindset is redemption and restoration. The chapter offers this really beautiful perspective. They redeem us from what was lost. They restore the nature of all things.
It speaks to that innate human desire for second chances.
It does. And the BFG Handbook links this to Isaiah 61.1, which talks about healing the brokenhearted. It suggests that even when things go wrong, there's always hope for healing and restoration.
Right.
So if you've experienced a setback in your learning or a professional disappointment, this doesn't mean it's the end. It's a chance to reflect, to learn from what happened, and to approach future challenges with a renewed perspective.
Right, to see it as an opportunity for growth.
Exactly. That apparent failure could actually pave the way for something even better down the line.
I love that. It's about reframing challenges not as defeats, but as opportunities.
Right. They become part of the journey. So now that we've explored mindset, let's move on to aim, setting your course. And here, I think we're taking those core mindset principles and transforming them into intentions. We're giving them direction.
So it's about taking those principles and making them actionable.
Exactly. So the mindset of proactive preparation naturally leads to the aim of preparation and prevention. And Proverbs 22.3 reinforces this idea of being intentional about planning ahead in different areas of our lives.
It's about taking those concrete steps to set ourselves up for success.
Exactly. And then the understanding of the power of small beginnings leads to the aim of small beginnings. It's about consciously choosing to value those initial steps and trusting the process of gradual progress.
Instead of getting overwhelmed by the big picture, we focus on what we can do today.
Exactly. And then embracing simplicity and humility informs the aim of simplicity and humility, echoing those principles from Matthew 6.19-20. It's about making a conscious choice to focus on what truly matters and letting go of the need for external validation or material possessions.
It's about simplifying our lives and focusing on what's truly important.
And then the mindset of trusting God's timing and non-interference guides us to the aim of non-interference and trusting God's timing.
Okay.
So it's about actively choosing to surrender that need to control every outcome and instead having faith in a larger process.
It's about letting go and trusting that things will unfold as they should.
Exactly. And the importance of perseverance naturally leads to the aim of perseverance and faithfulness, drawing strength from Galatians 6.9.
Right.
So we're setting a clear intention to stay committed to our goals, even when things get tough.
Right. It's about not giving up when the going gets tough.
Exactly. And finally, the mindset of redemption and restoration inspires the aim of redemption and restoration, which resonates with the message of Isaiah 61.1. It's about being open to growth and transformation, both personally and in the world around us.
It's about seeking opportunities to make things better, to heal, and to restore.
Absolutely. So these aims provide us with a sort of compass. They give us a sense of direction and purpose, guiding us in how we approach our learning, pursue our goals, and navigate life.
They provide a framework for aligning our actions with our values.
Exactly. So now we come to the most tangible part, practice, taking the first steps. This is where we take those aims, those intentions, and translate them into concrete actions.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. So the aim of preparation and prevention translates into the practice of preparation and prevention. And the BFG Handbook gives some specific actions to consider. Plan, pray, organize. And they tie it back to Proverbs 22.3. So it's not just about thinking about being prepared. It's about actually taking the time to plan, to seek guidance, and to get organized.
Right.
So that might involve setting aside time each week to plan, blocking out time for reflection or prayer, or developing systems to keep yourself organized.
It's about creating those habits and routines that support our aims.
Exactly. And the aim of starting small and building steadily leads to the practice of starting small and building steadily. This involves setting achievable goals and taking those daily steps. Instead of getting overwhelmed by a huge goal, we break it down into smaller, more manageable actions.
Right. It's about focusing on what we can do today and trusting that those small, consistent efforts will add up over time.
Exactly. Next, we have the aim of simplicity and humility, which leads to the practice of simplicity and humility. And the actions suggested here are: evaluate lifestyle, prioritize God's self-reflection. And they connect this back to Matthew 6.33. So it's about taking a look at how we're spending our time and energy and making conscious choices to prioritize what aligns with our values.
Right.
So that might mean decluttering our physical space or limiting distractions. Or maybe it's about creating space for regular self-reflection.
It's about being intentional with our time and energy.
Exactly. Now, the aim of trust in God's timing and patience leads to the practice of trust in God's timing and patience, which involves actively choosing to surrender control and to wait on God as guided by Psalm 27.14.
It's a practice in letting go.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we don't have control over everything and finding peace in that surrender. And then the aim of perseverance and consistency leads to the practice of perseverance and consistency, which the BFG Handbook sums up as stay faithful, trust continue. It's a reminder that achieving those long-term goals requires consistent effort even when we don't see immediate results.
It's about showing up even when it's hard.
Exactly. And finally, the aim of redemption and restoration leads to the practice of redemption and restoration, which involves actions like reconcile, serve, reflect on personal restoration. And they connect this to Luke 4.18. So it's about actively seeking to repair relationships, contribute to the well-being of others, and engage in self-reflection to foster our own healing and growth.
It's about being agents of positive change in the world.
Exactly. So this MAP framework provides a really comprehensive path. It starts with establishing a solid mindset, then defines our aims, and then gives us practical steps to put those aims into action.
It's a roadmap for living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
Absolutely. Now, something I found really fascinating was how the source material in its response section highlights some incredible parallels between these principles and teachings from other wisdom traditions.
That's really interesting.
It is. It emphasizes this idea that these core truths aren't limited to one specific belief system.
Right. They resonate across different cultures and philosophies.
Exactly. So, for example, when it comes to preparation, the source points to Christianity Proverbs 22.3, Islam Quran 8.60, Hinduism Bhagavad Gita 2.47, and Buddhism Dhammapada 2.23. And the underlying theme across all of them is this idea of acting with wisdom and foresight.
Right, of thinking ahead and planning accordingly.
Exactly. And that applies to anyone, regardless of their background. Whether it's preparing for a project, setting goals, or making important life decisions, that principle of preparation is universal.
Right.
Then we have humility and simplicity, which shows up in Christianity, Matthew 6.1921, Islam Hadith on contentment, Hinduism Bhagavad Gita 4.36, and Buddhism Dhammapada 2.23. And the common thread here is the importance of detaching from excessive worldly desires.
So it's about finding contentment and fulfillment in something deeper than material possessions.
Exactly. And the practical application of this principle is to focus on simplifying our lives, prioritizing relationships, and pursuing spiritual growth.
Right. It's about shifting our focus from the external to the internal.
Exactly. Then we have faithful consistency and steadfastness, which appears in Christianity, Hebrews 12.1, Islam Quran 8.46, Hinduism Bhagavad Gita 6.5, and Buddhism Dhammapada 232. And the unifying idea here is about facing challenges with patience and unwavering trust.
So it's about staying the course even when things get difficult.
Exactly. And this translates into the practical need to remain committed to our goals and endeavors through both the highs and the lows.
It's about resilience and perseverance.
Absolutely. And then trust in a higher power or guiding principle is reflected in Christianity, Proverbs 3.56, Islam Quran 65.2, Hinduism Bhagavad Gita 9.22, and even in Buddhist teachings. The shared wisdom here is about seeking guidance beyond our own limited understanding, recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
So it's about humility and surrendering to something greater than ourselves.
Exactly. And the practical step here is to actively seek guidance through prayer, meditation, or other spiritual practices when we're faced with uncertainty or difficult decisions.
It's about tapping into a source of wisdom beyond our own.
Absolutely. And finally, kindness and compassion are central themes in Christianity. Matthew 5.44, Islam Quran 41.34, Hinduism Bhagavad Gita 16.3, and Buddhism Dhammapada 5.
It seems like such a universal value.
It really does. And the message is consistent across all these traditions.
Yeah.
It's about the power of love and forgiveness to overcome negativity and hate.
So it's about choosing compassion over judgment and understanding over anger.
Exactly. And in our daily lives, this means making a conscious effort to treat others with kindness, empathy, and respect.
Right. It's about putting those values into practice in our interactions with everyone we meet.
Exactly. So it all comes back to this really profound statement that the source highlights. Truth cannot contradict truth. It suggests that at their core, these different wisdom traditions often converge on the same fundamental truths about living a meaningful and fulfilling life.
It's a reminder that we have more in common than we might think.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's revisit those key insights. The importance of proactive preparation, the power of small steps, the clarity of simplicity, the strength we find in cultivating trust, the necessity of perseverance, and the hopeful perspective of redemption.
These are all incredibly valuable principles to keep in mind as we navigate our own journeys.
They are. Now for a final thought to ponder. As you reflect on everything we've discussed today, which of these principles resonates most strongly with you right now? Which one speaks to the challenges you're facing or the aspirations you're pursuing? And what's one small step you can take today to start integrating that principle into your daily life?
That's a great question.
Maybe it's setting aside time for planning or breaking down a large goal into smaller steps. Or maybe it's about making a conscious effort to simplify your life or practice more compassion towards yourself and others. Whatever it is, remember that even small changes can make a big difference over time. And if you found this deep dive particularly insightful, you might want to explore the BFG Handbook further. There's a wealth of wisdom to be found in its pages.
Thanks for guiding us through this fascinating exploration. It's been a real pleasure.